I was working the night shift at the hospital. It was a few months ago. I thought taking on night shifts would help pay off my student loans fast. I was 32 and always believed I could connect with my patients. The hospital was big. The bright lights, beeping monitors, and strong smell of antiseptic surrounded me. I walked those dimly lit hallways and I remember thinking, I've never stopped thinking about it. Around the third shift, I went to check on Mrs. Hargrove. She was mumbling in her bed. Her eyes were wide open, staring into the dark. She looked terrified. I leaned closer, and she whispered, "Not him again." Then, she drifted back into silence. My heart raced. I thought maybe she was dreaming, but something felt off. That week, things got stranger. One night I strolled past the children's ward. It had been closed for years, but I heard laughter. It was faint and echoed off the walls. I stopped in my tracks, chills running down my spine. I peeked inside, but it was empty. Just silence. I must have been imagining things, but it felt too real to ignore. On another shift, I found an empty gurney rolling down the hall. No one was around. I wanted to laugh, thinking some nurse was playing a prank. I went after it. As I reached out to stop it, it suddenly rolled faster away from me. My hands trembled. I didn't want to shout but felt a need for help. Was I losing my mind? As the days passed, patients started talking about a figure watching them at night. They described a tall, shadowy form at the end of their beds. My stomach twisted. I tried to brush it off as meds reacting, but deep inside, I worried. My own mind felt shaken. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting something to be there. Then came the night I stepped outside for fresh air. I saw two nurses chatting, laughing. As I got closer, I wanted to ask, "Have you seen anything weird?" They stopped laughing. Their smiles faded. They looked at each other, and then looked away. Confused, I stuttered, What's wrong?" Before they could answer, I heard a whisper in my ear, icy and clear. "Why are you here?" I spun around, but no one was behind me. I couldn't trust what I was experiencing anymore. I wondered if I was going crazy, or if something dark lingered in the halls. I stared hard into each corner looking for answers. I felt I was being watched, but I didn't know by what. That night, as I walked back inside, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The shifts were getting longer and I was losing sleep. I still didn't know what was really happening, but every time I entered that hospital, a knot grew inside me. What was out there, hidden in the shadows? What was watching me? I arrived for my shift a little earlier than usual. The hospital looked the same, but the air felt heavier tonight. I walked through the entrance, the familiar antiseptic smell hitting me before I even stepped inside. I wasn't sure what I expected, but it felt different, like something had shifted while I was away. That night, my first task was to check on Mrs. Hargrove again. I found her in the same bed, but this time she seemed calmer. I shook my head, ready to take a deep breath of relief. But then she suddenly gasped, her eyes wide once more. "He's coming for me, don't let him take me," she screamed, thrashing against her sheets. My heart sank again. I reached for her hand, murmuring calming words, but it was like she couldn't hear me. I felt my own hands start to tremble. "Mrs. Hargrove, who's coming for you?" I asked, but she fell back into a murmur, her eyes glazing over. I left her room, hoping to clear my head. The hallway felt oppressive. The lights flickered momentarily. I remembered the whispers from the patients, the shadowy figure watching them. I peered into a dark corner. Nothing but shadows stared back. Still, the uneasy feeling clung to me. As I made my way toward the break room, I noticed the door to the children's ward slightly ajar. The laughter erupted again, echoing through the corridor. It was chilling, sending a shiver down my spine. Curiosity nagged at me. Was I really brave enough to push through that door? I opened it a crack, peeking inside. It was dark, but I could swear I saw shapes moving. Instinct sent me stepping back. That's when I heard the giggle again. Bright and innocent, entwined with something darker. I turned and walked briskly toward the break room. refusing to entertain any more thoughts. Inside, I poured myself a cup of coffee. My mind raced. I needed to talk to someone, to confirm I wasn't losing my grip. The other nurses were supposed to be on shift, but as I scanned the room, I noticed it was empty. Then I heard soft whispers. They were coming from the hall outside. I peered through the small window in the door and my stomach dropped. There were several figures standing there, shrouded in shadow. They looked like nurses, but their faces were obscured. Their heads turned all at once as if sensing my gaze, and I jerked back, heart racing. Suddenly the lights flickered again, plunging the break room into darkness for a few short moments. When the lights returned, the figures were gone. My breath caught in my throat. I stepped out cautiously, holding my breath. The empty hallway felt endless. This eerie silence wasn't right. Just when I thought everything was okay, something suddenly dropped to the floor. I spun to look and found a child's toy. It was a small clown, its eyes missing, smiling grotesquely at me. That's when everything clicked. The laughter in the children's ward, the shadowy figure of patients, all connected. I turned back toward the hallway, ready to confront whatever was happening, but a chill made me stop dead in my tracks. I wasn't alone anymore. Someone stood behind me. I held my breath, refusing to turn around. My heart thundered in my chest. The figure behind me was silent, but I could feel their presence creeping closer. Finally, with a deep breath, I turned slowly. It was just a nurse, a familiar face. "You okay?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. I nodded, but my instinct screamed to run. There was something off about her. I wanted to ask her if she felt it too. The heaviness in the air, the whispers from the hall, the laughter echoing in the darkness. Instead, I forced a smile. "Yeah, just a bit jumpy. Did you see anyone else around?" She shook her head, eyes darting towards the children's ward. "I was doing a check. It's so quiet tonight." I frowned. "Too quiet, right?" Her gaze shifted back to me, a puzzled look crossing her face. "You've been here longer than I have. Do you think there's something wrong?" Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from down the hallway. We both jumped in unison, and the nurse glanced nervously toward the source. Instinctively, I grabbed her arm. "Let's check it out," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't want to, but something about her determination pulled me along. We stepped cautiously into the corridor. As we approached the source of the noise, we saw an emergency cart tipped over on its side. Medical supplies spilled across the floor like a chaotic puzzle. I took a step closer, scanning the area, thinking of all the patients in the rooms nearby. Just then, a chilling laugh floated from behind a nearby door just out of sight. My gut twisted. I caught the nurse's eye, and we both instinctively took a step back. The sound was too innocent, too childlike, and yet full of something far more sinister. "Who's in there?" the nurse yelled, her voice echoing. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. "It's coming from the children's ward," I murmured, more to myself than her. My legs felt like lead. Suddenly, I remembered the clown toy I'd seen in the break room, the smile frozen on its face. I wasn't ready to confront whatever was lurking in that ward, but another laugh rang out, high-pitched and distorted, beckoning us. I looked at the nurse, her eyes wide with fear and determination. "We can't just leave it," she insisted, clutching my forearm. "What if there are kids in there?" Torching through my fear of the unknown, I nodded. "Okay, let's stick together." We moved toward the children's ward door, which was still ajar, the faint flicker of light spilling out. My pulse raced. As we stepped inside, a wave of cold air washed over us, and the laughter stopped abruptly. In the shadowy corners of the room, shapes lingered, small and indistinct. Then everything went dark. A piercing scream filled the air, cutting through the silence. I stumbled forward, trying to maintain my balance, but the weight of dread pulled me down. The lights flickered back on. The children's ward was empty. No laughs, no shapes, just quiet. I felt the nurse beside me, breathless. "What just happened?" she gasped. That's when I saw it, a single shoe, tiny and pink, lying in the center of the ward. I took a hesitant step forward, my eyes locked on the pink shoe. It was unmistakably a child's. and the sight sent a shiver down my spine. "Where did it come from?" I whispered, half expecting the shadows to answer. The nurse released my forearm and began scanning the room, but I was rooted in place. "This doesn't feel right," I said, my voice trembling. "What are we even doing here?" She gave me a quick look, anxiety etched on her face. "We need to find out if someone's okay. Maybe a door was left open or—" Right then, a soft giggle echoed from somewhere behind the nurse. My stomach dropped. It was the same eerie laugh we'd heard before, but this time it was closer. Immediately, panic washed over me. I had to check the source. "Did you hear that?" I barely managed to ask as the laughter faded into silence. The nurse turned, looking toward the far corner of the ward. "Maybe it's just an echo," she said, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. Before I could suggest we leave, a door at the opposite end of the room creaked open. I squinted into the darkness, heart hammering in my chest. The laughter swelled again, like a distorted melody beckoning. "Stay close," I whispered, not sure if I was trying to reassure her or myself. We approached the door, the flickering lights casting strange shapes on the walls. My skin prickled as a chill wrapped around us. The door stood slightly ajar, revealing nothing but blackness beyond. "Hello?" the nurse called, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. There was silence, and then a soft murmur. "Come play." A child's voice, sweet and innocent, calling out from the void. I exchanged a worried glance with the nurse. "This is wrong," I said. "We need to get help." But her resolve only seemed to harden. "We can't leave without knowing. What if—" A crash interrupted her, followed by the unmistakable sound of shuffling. I turned to scan the room behind us, panic rising. "We should really go," I insisted, taking a step back toward the exit, but the nurse was already moving forward. "Just a little further," she urged, her voice trembling with a mix of curiosity and fear. In that moment, I wasn't sure which was stronger anymore. The door creaked wider, revealing a shadowy figure resembling a child, but something felt deeply wrong. The figure stood at the threshold, swaying slightly, its face unmade but its eyes dark, like pools of endless night. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the sight. "We shouldn't be here," I shouted, fear ripping through me. The laughter returned, a chorus of voices, whispering sweetly, but filling the air with dread. The emergency lights flickered again, brightening the room for an instant and casting long shadows. When they dimmed, the figure was gone, leaving nothing but an echo of giggles and a feeling of absolute dread. The nurse turned back to me, her face pale. "Did you see that?" "Yeah," I gasped, "and I don't want to see it again." Just as I was about to bolt through the door, a cold hand gripped my ankle. I looked down, horrified, and saw the small pink shoe lying there again. This time, it wasn't alone. There were two more side by side, forming a line leading toward the dark corner of the room. "What is happening?" I whispered, the weight of fear crashing down on me. The laughter crescendoed into a high-pitched shriek, echoing around us, and I knew we had to run. But my feet felt glued to the floor. Just as I opened my mouth to scream, everything went dark again. The darkness swallowed us whole. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, a relentless drum drowning out all thoughts. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Instead, I focused on the icy grip around my ankle. How could something so small feel so terrifying? Suddenly, the emergency lights flickered back to life, casting an eerie glow across the room. I quickly looked down, expecting to see the small hand still gripping me, but it was just the pink shoes. They lay abandoned, mocking me, 3 little shoes in a row, their colors vibrant against the dull floor. "Let's get out of here," I finally shouted, yanking my foot free and sprinting toward the nearest exit. The nurse stood frozen for a second before following me, urgency breaking her trance. We pushed past the open door, rushing into the hallway. The fluorescent light seemed to hum with life, but the oppressive silence enveloped everything else. "What was that?" she panted, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," I replied, my breath coming out in quick bursts. "But those shoes, we need to tell someone." Just as we turned down the hallway, something caught my eye. A gleam of red, a reflection that flickered and vanished. I stopped, peering into one of the patient rooms. The door was partially open, shadows dancing inside. "Wait," I said, gripping the nurse's arm before she could continue. "What if?" The unspoken thought hung in the air. What if we weren't alone? We edged closer to the door, the world outside forgotten as the oppressive atmosphere of the ward pulled us in. I felt drawn to whatever was obscured in that room. The laughter returned, echoing again. But this time it didn't sound innocent. It was layered. A chorus of boys and girls giggling, their voices mixing into something decidedly more sinister. "Please tell me you hear that," I whispered as the nurse stepped up beside me, her face pale. "I hear it," she said, her voice low and trembling. "It's coming from in there." Before I could question her sanity, she pushed the door fully open. The room was empty, too empty. The bed was neatly made, medical equipment turned off, and the windows were tightly sealed. But on the floor, a series of drawings lay scattered. I bent down, the despair on my chest tightening. They were crayon drawings, stick figures with elongated limbs and huge empty eyes, all smiling widely. "I don't like this," I muttered, looking back at her. She was staring at something behind me, her eyes wide with horror. I turned slowly. A small figure appeared in the corner of the room, the same shadowy child we had seen in the ward. This time, it was holding a crumpled piece of paper. "Do you want to see?" it whispered, tilting its head. The laughter sharpened, a cacophony of taunts and hints that swirled in the air. I felt myself begin to understand the picture those drawings had painted. The hair on my arms stood up. "I think we need to go," I said, my voice suddenly trembling. The nurse grabbed my arm, but a loud bang sounded behind us. The door slammed shut, locking us in. An icy wave of terror rushed over me as I turned to face the small figure, its invitation still hanging in the air. I felt a surge of anger mix with my fear. "What do you want from us?" I shouted, not fully aware of what I was doing. Then everything went dark again. I gasped as the darkness enveloped us once more, almost suffocating. My instincts kicked in. I wrestled with the maze of shadows, feeling the nurse's vice-like grip on my arm. It was so quiet now, save for the petty beats of our breath. The room felt like a tomb. "Is it gone?" she whispered, her voice shaking. I strained to listen, all too aware that silence could mean danger. "I don't know," I replied, tightening my grip on her arm. My heart raced, pounding out a rhythm of fear. Then, without warning, the emergency lights flickered back to life, illuminating the room in a harsh bluish glow. I blinked, half expecting the child to vanish, but instead, it stood there, the crumpled paper still dangling from its tiny fingers. The air felt charged, as if something heavy was about to break. "Do you want to see?" it asked once more, its voice far too cheerful for the situation. I didn't want to see anything. I wanted to escape. "Step back," I shouted, edging away from the figure. "What do you want?" The child's smile widened, revealing a row of stark white teeth. "You'll see soon," it said, then pointed at the crumpled paper. The laughter rose again, playing tricks on the nerves. It sounded closer, echoing off the hospital walls. I felt trapped, and the anger that burst inside me transformed into desperation. "Just let us go." But my words seemed to fuel its delight. The laughter grew, filling the room like a sinister orchestra. "Now!" I yelled to the nurse, the panic rising. "We have to find another way out." I grabbed her hand and yanked her toward the other side of the room, where a window offered a sliver of hope. "No, wait!" she screamed, trying to pull me back. "The door!" But my mind raced faster than my body could move. I slid to the window, glancing back just in time to see the figure was no longer in the corner. My breath hitched. Where did it? A loud thud reverberated through the wall, shaking the floor beneath us. I stumbled forward, my instincts screaming to run. We had to escape. The atmosphere thickened, almost tangible. "Go," I urged, my voice rising. But she hesitated, looking back at the door, the only exit we had left. Before I could even protest, she rushed towards it, flinging it open. It creaked ominously, revealing a dark hallway beyond. The lights flickered there too, giving just enough visibility to know something lurked just out of sight. "Don't!" I shouted as I grasped her arm again, but it was too late. She stepped into the corridor and the laughter erupted louder, almost like a welcome. The door slammed shut behind us. Panic shot through my veins and I whipped around. My heart was a runaway train now, boiling over with fear. "Where do we go?" I asked, my voice cracking. That's when I noticed the crumpled paper she had just unfolded. "What's that?" "Maybe it's a clue," she breathed, eyes wide with determination. As she held it to the light, I saw it clearly for the first time. The drawing on the paper featured the same stick figures, smiling, elongated, unsettling. But in the center, one had a red circle around it. "No," I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. "No, no, no. Something's wrong." At that moment, the light flickered one last time, and then went out. Everything went black. I felt the nurse's hand slip from mine. Panic surged. "Are you there?" I called out, my voice small against the vast nothingness. I reached out, my fingers brushing against a wall. It felt cold and unyielding. I could hear her breathing, shallow and quick, but she didn't respond. "Stay close," I insisted, trying to steady my own panic. The laughter echoed again, a disembodied sound that raised the hairs on my neck. "Where do we go now?" she finally asked, her voice quaking. "Back to the door," I said. "If we can get out of this hallway." We stumbled through the dark, the edges of the corridor a deep void. I could barely make out my own feet, much less the fact that something might be watching us. Suddenly a sharp light flickered on again, but it wasn't the emergency lights. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. My heart sank as I recognized the figure at the end of the corridor, a hospital security guard, standing with an expression that seemed both perplexed and terrified. For a moment I felt relief wash over me. "Help!" I shouted, my voice cracking. He stepped closer, the beam of light revealing his startled face. "What are you doing in here?" he barked, the authority in his tone mixed with confusion. "You're not supposed to be—" Before he could finish, the laughter returned, louder this time, vibrating through the walls. The guard looked around, his expression shifting from annoyance to alarm. "What was that?" "We have to get out," I urged, pulling the nurse with me. I felt an ache in my chest. The urgency coursing through me was overwhelming. He shifted, pointing the flashlight down the hall. "It's that way, but hurry." As we dashed toward him, I stole a glance back over my shoulder. I half expected to see the child again, and my heart raced as an icy chill crept up my spine. "What about the doors?" I shouted. "Are they locked?" He shook his head, eyes wide. "I don't know. We need to move now." With that, we turned the corner, and suddenly, the lights flickered on in a series of bursts before plunging us into darkness again. "Where are we?" the nurse asked, clearly scared. "Just keep going," the guard replied, his voice strained. But I could hear something else too, a soft whispering entwined in the laughter drawing near. My heart pounded once more. "What's happening? What does it want?" The guard hesitated for just a moment, then said, "I don't know, but it's been haunting this floor for weeks. No one knows how or why." His words hung in the air, and I felt a rush of dread. "And the paper?" I asked. "We saw something. It has to mean something." In response, the guard turned to me, a shimmer of desperation in his eyes. "Just focus on getting out. The longer we stay here, the worse it gets." Then, before we could react, there was a heavy thump behind us, a sound that sent us all into a panic. I turned. My gut churned as I caught a glimpse of something darting through the shadows. "Run!" I shouted, but my legs felt leaden, the horror of what lurked growing heavier on my shoulders. That's when I saw it, a figure forming at the doorway we had just passed. It was smiling, and in that moment all I could think was that we might not escape after all. I couldn't take my eyes off that figure. It was as if time stopped and dread crawled over me, grounding me to the spot. "Go!" I screamed again, tearing my gaze away. I pushed the nurse and the guard forward, stumbling to keep pace. The laughter echoed, fading in and out, but I could feel it pressing on me. We turned another corner, but the air felt thick, almost suffocating. The guard led us into a side room, quickly shutting the door behind us. My pulse raced as he flicked the flashlight off, plunging us into darkness once more. The nurse's breathing was rapid beside me, and I could see her silhouette against the faint light seeping from under the door. "What now?" she whispered, fear etched across her face. Just give me a second," I said, forcing myself to catch my breath. I could still hear the laughter, like it was drawing closer, wrapping itself around us. The guard shifted nervously, his eyes darting around the room. "We need to figure out what that thing is. It's been reported before, but no one believes it," he said. "They think it's just an urban legend." "An urban legend?" I struggled to understand. Then why is it here? Why is it after us? Suddenly the lights flickered back to life, revealing a cluttered storeroom, the kind you'd expect to find in a hospital, filled with supplies and medical equipment. I could see a few broken chairs and a dusty examination table, but there was something else too, a piece of paper lying crumpled on the floor. "That!" I pointed, feeling an instinctual pull. The guard hesitated but moved towards it, his flashlight illuminating the paper like it held the secrets to our escape. He picked it up and smoothed it out, his brow furrowing as he studied the faded text. "What does it say?" I asked, leaning in. His face paled as he held it closer. "It's notes. From someone who worked here. About a patient." He trailed off, his voice faltering. "About what?" The urgency coursed through me, desperate for any clue. He looked up, panic flashing in his eyes. "It keeps mentioning a girl in the hallway, and something about her needing help. But there's more. Something about a key. A key used to lock something away. I don't know." Before he could finish, the door rattled violently, and our collective fear surged. "It knows we're here," the nurse squeaked. "Get back!" the guard shouted, stepping in front of us. The light flickered and dimmed, looming shadows stretching into the corners of the room. "That figure," I murmured, my breath hitching. "It could be her, the girl." I felt a sudden realization hit me, mixed with cold dread. What if she wasn't here to guide us, but to keep us? "We need to find a way out," the guard said. "Fast." But at that moment, the door burst open with a force that ricocheted through the room, revealing the smiling figure again, more solid than before. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. I had to get out now. "What do we do?" I cried as panic surged. As the figure stepped inside, its smile widening, I felt a scream welling up within me, realizing it wasn't just laughter I heard anymore. It was a beckoning. And I was already too late. The figure loomed in the doorway, its grin stretching impossibly wide. I tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. The guard pushed us behind him, his body blocking the light like a shield. My heart hammered in my chest as I glanced at the nurse. Her eyes were wide with pure terror. "What do you want?" the guard shouted, his voice surprisingly steady. The figure tilted its head, the smile unwavering. It didn't answer. Instead, it stepped forward, and I felt a chill race through me, as if the temperature had dropped. The room felt smaller, the darkness creeping closer. "Don't engage with it," I blurted out, scrambling for a plan. If this thing was the girl in the hallway, then maybe, just maybe, there was a chance she was more than just a monster. The nurse grabbed my arm. "What if she's in pain? What if we can help her?" I shook my head. "No, this is wrong. We need to get out. We need to find that key mentioned in those notes." Before I could say anything more, the figure lunged. The guard reacted quickly, stepping to the side and grabbing the nearest object, a metal tray, from the examination table. He swung it at the figure, but it passed right through, leaving him staggering in shock. The figure's laughter echoed, sending icy fingers creeping down my spine. "Run!" I shouted, pushing the nurse toward the door. The guard followed, but I could feel the figure's gaze on my back. We stumbled into the hallway, the lights flickering again. Panic clawed at my throat. "Where do we go?" I asked breathlessly. The laughter continued, bouncing off the walls like a mad lullaby. "There!" The guard pointed to a door at the end of the corridor, the kind marked with an ominous, "Employees Only." We dashed towards it, and as we did, The laughing intensified. It wasn't just in my head anymore. It surrounded us like a storm. I grabbed the doorknob, heart racing. It turned easily, and I pushed it open, dragging the nurse and guard inside with me. The room beyond was small and cluttered, filled with old equipment and dusty shelves. The air was stale, enveloping us like a forgotten tomb. I could still hear the laughter, muffled now but still echoing faintly. "We need to find something. Anything," I gasped, scanning the shelves for the key or any hint of a way out. But everything felt abandoned, like remnants of forgotten lives. "Look," the nurse whispered, pointing at a small box tucked away in the corner. It was dusty and locked tight, but I felt a pull. "That's it, the key." I hurried over, my fingers brushing against the surface. It was a heavy metal box, covered in rust and grime. If only we could find a way to open it. Suddenly, the door we entered through slammed shut. We darted back, but it wouldn't budge. Something was on the other side. "Did she block us in?" the nurse whispered, fear creeping back into her voice. "Stay close," I said, my mind racing. The laughter returned, louder this time, reverberating through the walls. Whatever was outside was coming for us. That's when a loud thump echoed from the direction of the locked box. "Move!" I shouted, instinct taking over. The guard and nurse followed me as I backed away from the sound. The laughter morphed into something darker, something sinister. "Help her," it called. "Help me." I glanced at the box again just as a crack opened. My pulse raced. We had to figure this out, and fast. Whatever was in that box might be the key to our survival or our demise. I rushed to the box, the gruesome laughter twisting in my ears. "Help her," it echoed again, an unsettling mix of innocence and menace. I could feel the darkness coiling around us, urging me to act quickly. My heart pounded as I attempted to pry the lid open, but it wouldn't budge. The nurse glanced nervously at the door. "What if you can't get it open in time?" With every passing second, the laughter grew louder, almost explosive in its mirth. It clawed at my sanity, driving me onward. I frantically scanned the room for anything that might help. A small metal rod caught my eye. I grabbed it and slammed it against the lock. The metal groaned, but the door remained closed, mocking me. Beside me, the guard was restless, shifting from foot to foot. "We can't stay here," he exclaimed, glancing at where shadows crept closer. "What's inside that box?" "I don't know," I huffed, desperation clawing at my voice. "But it's our only chance." Just as I swung the rod again, a loud crash resounded from the door. We jumped back instinctively, the vibrations rattling in my bones. "Can't you just—" The nurse's words cut off as the door visibly bowed inward, something powerful pushing against it. "Stay back," I shouted. With one final blow, the lock sprang free with a metallic clang, and I flung open the lid of the box. Dust and eons of neglect poured out, swirling around us in a haze. Inside, a faded key glinted dully at the bottom. Without thinking, I snatched it up. "Here," I cried, thrusting it toward the guard. "We need to find a door this unlocks." But the laughter escalated, chaotic and unrelenting. The shadowy figures loomed at the edges of the room, their forms flickering like candle flames. I felt the weight of their gaze, pressing in. "Quick, this one might fit," the guard said, pointing at a door that had been concealed by boxes. It appeared untouched, but darkness pooled around its edges. I rushed forward, heart racing, and tried the key in the handle. It clicked, and time felt suspended for a moment before I yanked the door open. A blinding light enveloped us. We stumbled through, emerging in a small stairwell. Just as I turned to call back to the nurse, the door slammed shut, trapped behind. "Is it over?" the nurse panted, staring wide-eyed at the door. The laughter had dimmed, but dark echoes still danced in my mind. "I don't know," I replied, swallowing hard. "But we're not safe yet." Heavy footfalls echoed behind us, sluggish but steady. I motioned for silence and led the way down the stairs, my heart still hammering an erratic rhythm. Each step felt weighted with dread. Eventually we reached a lower level, the flickering fluorescent lights barely illuminating a long corridor. I could see hospital equipment abandoned in random spots, tattered beds, rolled-up stretchers, and in the distance, more open doors leading into the unknown. "This place has been deserted," the nurse said, fear lacing her words. "Maybe we can find an exit." "Yes," I said, dread flooding my veins. "Stay close," the guard instructed, pacing in front of us as we moved cautiously down the hall. Yet silence hung heavily, a stark contrast to the pandemonium we'd just escaped. Each door I glanced at became a reminder of what we'd just faced. What had been behind that door? Had we escaped? Or merely left a nightmare for another? As we explored, it became evident that this level was equally disturbing, filled with remnants of patients who might never have left. The hospital's essence clung to the air like a lingering shadow. Suddenly, a flicker caught my eye. Just a glimpse of red. My heart leaped. I staggered forward and the others followed. It was another shoe, sitting innocently in the middle of a room, stark against the drab floor. My breath caught in my throat. "Look," I whispered, pointing. It was identical to the others, but where the shoes lay, I now saw a small outline cut into the darkness. There was something behind it. My instinct flared with fear, a sensation I was quickly becoming all too familiar with. I turned to the guard and nurse, but they were riveted by the sight. "Should we look?" the nurse asked, her voice trembling. "Do you want to?" I shot back. My words came out harsher than intended. The guard stepped closer, eyes wide. "We need to see." As he inched forward, my heart raced again with uncertainty. "No, wait," I wanted to scream, but the urge to find out the truth was too much. Before I could stop him, he pushed aside the shadowy outline. The darkness flickered, revealing a small, dusty chest nestled against the wall. "Another box?" I whispered, a sense of dread creeping back. "What's in there?" "Let's see," he said, excitement and fear wedging into his tone. I didn't want to stick around. "Let's find a way out of here," I urged. But curiosity snagged the nurse. She drew closer as the guard rifled through the chest's contents. As he began to pull out old documents, a terrible rush of cold air swept through the corridor. "No!" I shouted, my instincts roaring at me to run. "We have to go right now!" The laughter flooded the air again, angry and distorted, and I felt it wrap around my throat. "Please," I cried, but my voice faltered as the guards dropped everything and stumbled back. There wasn't just laughter. The shadows thickened into shapes forming before us. They coalesced at the doorframe, specters twisted with rage. My instincts kicked. "Run!" I yelled with all my strength. I grabbed the nurse's arm and bolted down the corridor, the guard close behind. As we fled, laughter crescendoed into a wailing scream that pierced through the hall. I raced forward, desperate to find any shred of light, of salvation, until I saw it. A door up ahead, glowing eerily like a beacon in the darkness. "Push!" I shouted, racing towards it. I grasped the handle and yanked it open, dragging my companions behind me. We stumbled outside, gasping for breath, the night air hitting us like a cold wave. But as I turned to look back, the door slammed shut behind us, silence wrapping around like a shroud. "Did we escape?" the nurse gasped, her eyes reflecting terror. I didn't know how to answer. "I think so," but deep down, I felt that question linger. Emerging into the cool night, I could still hear the laughter echoing in the distance, intertwining with the shadows. The hospital loomed behind us, ominous and menacing. We would leave, but that laughter would remain echoing in my mind long after we were gone. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if my colleagues are still there, pulled into the depths of the darkness, or if the darkness still waits, but mostly I try not to think about it.